Good morning, students, and welcome to a brand new chapter in history for your 8th standard. If you all recollect your 7th standard history, we left off at a place where the Mughal Empire was in a state of decline. There were no powerful rulers in the majority part of India, and the Britishers had just entered India by way of the East India Company on the pretext of doing trade. So this is where we had left off in your 7th standard history. So now coming to your 8th standard, the first lesson that is when, where and how is more of an introductory chapter and a little bit disconnected from your 7th standard history. So we will not do that chapter because your attention which is required is more on the second lesson, that is about from trade to territory. So we will start your history for the 8th standard from the second lesson, from trade to territory. So the British East India Company. Now in Europe, these East India companies were very popular. There was the British East India Company, there was the Dutch East India Company. These were the major East India companies because they were established with the sole purpose of doing trade with the Asian countries. So the Dutch East India Company and the British East India Company, both of them came into India, and mainly they would trade in spices, and they would trade in cotton and in silk. These were the three main trade items which had a huge market in the European countries. So these two trading companies, they came to India and they established their offices in various parts in India. But they faced one main hurdle, a problem they faced when they were establishing their offices in India and when they started to do trade with the different kingdoms in India. One thing that they noticed was each and every different kingdom in India had their own set of rules. They had their own way of collecting taxes and they had their own way of doing business. So this was a problem for these companies, the British East India Company mainly, because they were not used to doing business in this way. Whenever they went to a new location in India, they had to follow a different set of rules. They had to give a totally different percentage of taxes. One king would take a higher percentage, other king would take a lesser percentage. It was very difficult for them. And mainly, most importantly, to get the permission to do trade itself was a big hassle for the East India Company. So they started thinking to themselves, there should be something better. So this was the period in history, in Indian history, which was seeing the end of the Mughal rule. Aurangzeb was the last and most powerful Mughal ruler, and he was followed by a succession of very weak rulers after he died in 1707. Thus, the empire was broken into various small pieces, and more than the ruler, the zamindars and the subadars, they were the people who had more power and they were more powerful than the Mughal emperor. And the British East India Company knew this very well, that the Mughal Empire was weak. There was no powerful, popular single ruler to rule over a majority part of India, and India, most importantly, was not a united country. The Britishers knew this very well. So the East India companies, many East India companies from Europe, the Portugal, the Dutch, the French and the British came to India for trading, and they came to India via the sea route. All the companies were interested in buying the same goods, that is textiles, cotton, silk, spices, and obviously when they all wanted the same thing, this would lead to great amount of competition. Now once this competition started, the British East India Company realized that unless and until they ruled that particular place where they wanted to do this trade, it would be very difficult for them to do trade. So we have one of the first battles in history, which was a battle for trade and a battle for control. The English set up their first factory on the banks of the river Hooghly in 1651. They refused to pay duty, and this caused a huge loss to the revenue of Bengal. And at that point of time, Bengal was ruled by the Nawab Murshid Quli Khan. So he protested against this office which was set up by the British East India Company because they had not asked for his permission. They just came and set up their office. So this did not make him happy. He was not happy at this particular time, this development. He and his successors, the rulers, the Nawabs who followed him, there is Alivardi Khan and Sirajuddaulah, were forced to pay them duty. The conflicts culminated to the Battle of Plassey. You would have heard of the Battle of Plassey in earlier classes also. So, but this main Battle of Plassey which came was basically a battle for control over trade. So the Battle of Plassey, what was this battle? In 1756, when Sirajuddaulah became the Nawab, he established control over the company's forts at Kasim Bazar and Calcutta. This was how the battle started because he took control over the company's forts. The forts which were ruled were in control of the British East India Company. On hearing this news, the company officials in Madras sent forces. Madras is present day Chennai. Okay. So in Madras sent forces under the command of Robert Clive. Prolonged negotiations with the Nawab failed, and finally in 1757 Robert Clive led the company to victory. The main cause for the defeat of Sirajuddaulah was the forces led by one of his commanders, that is Mir Jafar. He did not fight at all. What happened over here was the Britishers, they approached Mir Jafar. Now Mir Jafar was a very powerful commander under the Nawab Sirajuddaulah. And once the Britishers approached Mir Jafar, they told him that if you do not fight, and if Nawab Sirajuddaulah were to lose this Battle of Plassey, they would make, that means the Britishers would make Mir Jafar the Nawab of Bengal. So this is a form of corruption which erupted over there, and the Britishers knew the weakness of Indians and they capitalized on this particular weakness, and that is the reason why the Battle of Plassey was almost never fought at all, because Mir Jafar did not fight and directly they conceded defeat to the Britishers. This was because Clive had managed to secure his support by promising to make him the next Nawab after crushing Sirajuddaulah. The battle became famous as it was the company's first major victory. Imagine the entire province of Bengal came under the rule of the Britishers. They had control of entire Bengal and the entire revenue. Revenue means the entire income or the money that would be generated from the farmers, from the trade. All this money would be coming to the Britishers. This was seen as the first major victory for the British East India Company. Next came the Battle of Buxar. And what happened over here was after the defeat, Mir Jafar was made the Nawab, but he also protested and thus was replaced by another Nawab, Mir Qasim. Mir Qasim complained and fought the Battle of Buxar in 1764, but eventually he also lost to the Britishers. In 1765, the company was appointed as the Diwan of Bengal by the Mughals. Thus, the revenue from India could finance the company's expenses. So what was happening over here is the Nawabs of Bengal who were appointed by the Britishers, they themselves were not happy with their position and they rebelled against the Britishers and fought against the Britishers. And finally in the year 1765, the company appointed the Britishers themselves as the Diwan of Bengal. And thus the revenues from India, whatever earning, whatever revenue, whatever money was coming from India, all this money could finance the operations of the British East India Company. Now over here in your book you would see a small expression which are called as Nawabs. Nawabs. Now these Nawabs were basically the Nawabs themselves or the Britishers who started behaving like the Nawabs. British officials such as Clive, managed to return to Britain with plenty of wealth and led flashy lives and flaunted their riches. They were called as Nawabs. They were seen as upstarts and were ridiculed in the society. This is because these British officials, they were mainly army officers. They had collected so much of wealth in India during all the wars and the battles, and by getting so much of money from the kings, that finally when they did return to Britain, they lived very flashy lives. Flashy lives means they would show off all their wealth. They built very nice big houses. They had lots of servants with them, and they started being called as Nawabs. This is a term which is there in the textbooks also. It's explained over there also. Right? So now, after getting the control of Bengal, which is an extremely revenue rich and extremely large part of the eastern part of India, the company realized something. They realized that if they have to keep India, if they have to expand their trade inside India, and if they have to make more and more profits within India, they will need to have more and more territory under their control. And to attain this territory, to get this territory, they would have to get these small kings who were ruling different locations in India under their control. And they knew that it was possible to get these kings under their control even without fighting any battles. Yes, without fighting battles, they were able to get control of major parts of India. This is called as annexation, wherein you don't need to fight battles. You don't have to shed the blood of thousands and thousands of soldiers. And this is exactly what the Britishers did, and they had a policy of annexation. Annexation means taking control of the particular location under yourselves with proper permission of the present ruler. Yes. If you see all the locations which the Britishers annexed to themselves, it would be very surprising to see that without fighting, without any kind of protest, most of the locations, most of the areas of India came under the British rule. They had three policies. They had three laws which they had framed, and they would put these laws forcefully on the rulers. One was subsidiary alliance, the second was claim to paramountcy, and the third one was the doctrine of lapse. We will see how these three laws were used effectively in most parts of India to get control of majority parts of India. The first one, subsidiary alliance. What happened over here was, according to the terms of this alliance, Indian rulers were not allowed to have their independent forces. So the Indian rulers were not permitted to have any army of their own. They were to be protected by the company and had to pay for the subsidiary forces. What the Britishers told them was, they went to the kings. And the Britishers went to the kings and they told them, why do you want to keep such a big army? Why do you want to spend so much money after looking after this army? You have to feed the army, you have to pay them monthly salaries. They are not fighting any wars or anything, but they're just sitting over there and you're paying them money. So the Nawabs themselves and the kings themselves are thinking, the Britishers, what they're saying is right. Why should I spend so much money on an army which I don't require? So what the Britishers told them was, you don't keep your army. Instead, we have plenty of soldiers of our own. We have plenty of soldiers. We will give you our soldiers. We will give you our own British soldiers. There are many Indians also in this British army. And you just need to pay us a small amount. You pay us a small amount and you can have as many soldiers as you want. This was a subsidiary alliance. And under the subsidiary alliance, if the king was not able to pay for the subsidiary alliance, was not able to pay for the army, then the territory which was under the king, under the Nawab, would become a part of British territory. It was a very clever kind of understanding, because in the initial phases, the kings and the Nawabs were very happy because they would save so much of money. They had to just pay a fraction of the amount what they were spending on their own armies, a fraction of that amount they had to pay for the British East India Company, for the subsidiary alliance. But subsequently what happened was these Nawabs and kings started becoming more and more greedy. They wanted more and more bigger army, but they were unable to pay for this. So under Richard Wesley, as the Governor General during the period of 1798 to 1805, the Nawab of Awadh and Hyderabad were forced to give over parts of their territory as they had failed to pay for this alliance. This was how the subsidiary alliance was used. Then we have another law which was given by the British, that is claim to paramountcy. Now under this, Lord Hastings as the Governor General from the period of 1813 to 23 for 10 years, a new policy, that is paramountcy, was initiated. It claimed that the company was paramount or supreme. Hence, in order to protect its interests, it was justified in annexing or threatening to annex any kingdom. And under this law, they were able to take Kittur, yes, a part of Karnataka itself. They were able to take Sindh and Punjab into under their control. So what this law said was that the Britishers had come to India for trade, and so as long as they were doing trade and to keep a protection over their interests, over their their soldiers, over their territory, they would have to take control of certain kingdoms so that they would be able to do trade in a much more better way. So this was a forceful annexation which was done by Lord Hastings, and in this way he was able to take 3 territories under his control. And then we have the doctrine of lapse. This is one of the most horrible doctrines of ways of taking kingdom, and one of a very popular kingdom which was taken by this was the kingdom of Jhansi. You would have seen the story of the Rani of Jhansi, where she did not have a child of her own. They had a adopted son. And what the Britishers said was, Lord Dalhousie was the Governor General of the Britishers at that particular time, from 1948 to 1956. What he had devised this doctrine, and he said that if a king were to die and he did not have an heir, means he did not have a son of his own, then that particular territory would automatically come under the control of the Britishers. This was called as the doctrine of lapse. And in this way, they were able to annex Satara, Sambalpur, Udaipur, Nagpur, Jhansi, Awadh, all these places, very, very important and large territories in India, were annexed by Lord Dalhousie by the usage of doctrine of lapse. So using these 3 laws, they were able to annex major parts of India without fighting any major battles, without losing soldiers, without shedding blood. They were able to control large portions of large territories of India. So up till now in this chapter, we learned about how the Britishers actually came to India on the pretext of doing trade. They came through India through the British East India Company, and in order to facilitate their trade, in order to make trade for them more easier, they started acquiring more and more territory. Initially, it was the territory of Bengal, the first one after the Battle of Plassey, which they took under their control. And soon, the governor generals who came to India, they started putting their own laws, like the doctrine of lapse, the law of paramountcy, and the subsidiary alliance. Through these laws, they started annexing more and more large parts of India to get under their control. So please read your textbooks till now, whatever we have read. You can highlight any parts which you are not able to understand clearly. You can always put them in the doubt section of the school app. I will reply to them so that your doubts also are cleared. So that's all for me for today. Stay home, stay safe, and have a good day. Thank you.